Okay, in this vid, we're going to go over two JavaScript things, client-side scripting, sort of a miscellaneous overview of things that are important when you're using JavaScript in the browser, and we're going to go over the window object when you're using JavaScript in the browser. The window object represents an open window or an open tab or an iframe within a window, and it has all kinds of handy properties and methods that we can use. Okay, client-side scripting. There are 4 ways to write JavaScript. You can use JavaScript inside script tags like we've seen. You can embed an external script like this. Always make sure to open and close the script tag when you're doing this. Don't self-close it like an image tag. That's bad news. You can do an inline event handler like this. So when this link is clicked on click, it'll run whatever JavaScript we've put in here. And I can show you that here. So when we click this guy, it says hi. There's no underline because there's no href attribute in that. Okay, the other way is you can write JavaScript like this using like a JavaScript colon protocol, as if it were like HTTP colon or something like that. So you can actually put this inside a link, like a href, and then write your JavaScript and just put JavaScript colon before whatever JavaScript you want. You used to be able to put JavaScript colon and then whatever JavaScript you wanted, like right in the address bar of a browser, but I can't get it to work in Chrome. I think at least some browsers have restricted that because of security issues. You know, somebody could give you some code and be like, hey, this is going to be nice, and then it would be a virus or something stupid. Okay. In the old days, you used to have to use type attributes in your script tags, like text slash JavaScript. Text slash JavaScript is the default now, so you don't need to use this if you're writing JavaScript. And the language attribute is really old. Language equals JavaScript. Definitely don't use that. That's depreciated now. So all you have to do is do script, like we're doing here. Okay, so there's a thing called cdata. So if you're using XML, which we haven't really messed with, but it's like HTML, but slightly different, and it's a way to pass data around. If you're using XML, you need to do something like this inside your script tags, cdata, and then close your cdata after your script. That way your JavaScript won't be parsed by the XML and everything get messed up. So you'll see that sometimes, and that's what it is. It's just a little way of hiding the JavaScript to the XML. Okay, let's talk about document.write. You don't see this too much anymore. We used to use it. The thing with document.write is that it like refreshes the whole page whenever it does something. So here I'm putting a document.write inside a setTimeout. So in the original page, it'll say test1, and then after 2 seconds, it should say test2. I actually haven't tested this. Let's see if it works. Yeah. So see, instead of just like writing test2 like after test1 or something like that, it actually refreshed the whole page or repainted the whole page or something like that. However you say it. So you pretty much don't use document.write. There are a lot better ways to like target this h1 and then just put the new text that we want inside that h1 instead of refreshing the whole page. Okay, there are attributes for our script tags called defer and async. Async will run it. So a script in the async tag will run as soon as it's downloaded, and a defer script will run after the page is done loading. So async is good, but you have to watch out because if you're trying to manipulate stuff on the page that's not even loaded yet, you're going to run into problems. But async is good if you can use it. And there are other ways to defer script as well. This isn't always the best way. Here's another way to do asynchronous JavaScript. Here we haven't gotten to getElementById and by tag name and stuff. We'll get into that soon, but pretty much you can grab the head, stick it in a variable, then you can create a script tag like this, and then we stick a source attribute in the script tag, and then we the URL gets passed into this function, and then we append that whole script tag to the head. So that'll also load your JavaScript asynchronously. Okay, we'll get more into the window object in a minute, but as we're talking about how to load your JavaScript, you're going to want generally to run your JavaScript like after the page is loaded. I should rephrase that. This is a way you'll see scripts written a lot of times that they run after the page is loaded. There are other better ways to do it. You can run some stuff before the page is finished loading, but this is common. So window onload gets fired after everything's loaded, like your images and stuff, and then this will run. Okay, we're going to talk about adding event listeners. So another way to do that, like window onload, is to window addEventListener load. It's the very same thing as we just did, just another way to do it. And there's a similar one, attachEvent. This is for IE. So if we're using stuff like jQuery, generally jQuery is pretty cross-browser. You know, you write one thing and it just works in all browsers. There are a couple little bugs and stuff in jQuery, or there used to be, but for the most part jQuery is pretty solid. But when you're using JavaScript without jQuery, you really got to get into cross-browser stuff. There'll be different commands. So for regular browsers, you can use addEventListener, and then for IE, you have to use attachEvent. When jQuery came out, they said it made JavaScript fun again. There were a lot fewer headaches. You could just write whatever fun stuff you wanted to do. See, this addEventListener, I'm sorry, this attachEvent, excuse me, that doesn't work in Chrome. It's just an IE thing. Okay, so here's a way to feature detect. We're going to say, hey, if your browser has event listener, this will return true. Then run this one. If it doesn't, like if it's IE, then run attachEvent. And if it doesn't have that, we'll run onKeyDown, which is good for everything. I don't know why you wouldn't use this one instead of these, but this is just an example of the kind of stuff you'll do to feature detect. And feature detection is a lot better than browser detection. We'll get into that shortly. Okay, so we've talked about setTimeouts before. setTimeout just means, hey, run this after an interval that I specified. So I think I specified 2 seconds there. So after 2 seconds, it ran this alert. There is also a setInterval, which will repeatedly run whatever you want at this interval. So this will wait 2 seconds, then it'll fire. Then it'll wait 2 seconds, and it'll fire. So you see that. Okay, one thing that is nice about these guys is that you can clear them. Hey, where did my clears go? Oh, I think we get into that later. Okay, so what are we doing here? We're going to talk about conditional comments. If you mess with CSS a lot, you've seen these. There's a way to send code just to IE, just to Internet Explorer, or just to specific versions of IE. If you're having a bug in IE7, you can write specific CSS or JavaScript, as we'll see here, just for that. So here you just include this kind of weird thing, and that'll just send this to IE7 only, whatever's inside. So here we're sending a special script to IE7 only, and then this will go out to everything. And using that same kind of syntax, you could send something to all IEs. Here we're saying if this is IE, then send this IE only JavaScript, and if it's not IE, then send this. So this is pretty handy. I mean, you usually don't want to do this if you can help it, but if you have to, this is a good way to do it. Also, here's some kind of nasty, weird IE conditional comment stuff. But here, this won't be seen by anything but IE. So we could write in our JavaScript, we could just write special JavaScript just for IE and wrap it in this. Similarly, we could do this kind of trickery where this is a comment, so this isn't seen, but the IE conditional comment goes on till here. So here, this gets seen by IE, so this script will be run by IE and not by anything else, and this will get run by everything else. It's pretty nasty, but that exists. Okay, one thing you want to be careful about in writing JavaScript for the browser is cross-site scripting. It's a security thing, and you can get bad scripts injected, like virus type stuff. And here's a little example of how that could happen. So here we're saying, we'll get into this window location stuff, but window location just tells you the URL of the page you're on. So this is saying grab part of the URL and stick it into a variable called name, and then write that variable out to the page. So it would say hello name, and that's all fine and dandy. But if the user like has a weird URL, just gonna keep doing it. Yeah, that's okay. Okay, so if the user had a URL like a URL something like this would be the issue. So parenthesis 3C means left angle bracket, and then so here we're saying like script source, and then here we're like loading an external script or something like that. My syntax is probably a little wrong, but this kind of thing is what an example of cross-site scripting. So you don't want somebody to like load a script and then you know, in your user input, and then you would actually write out that script. It would actually call that script or something like that. That's how bad things happen, like viruses and stuff. So to avoid that, you want to like clean your input before you use it. So here we're using the replace method, and we're replacing left angle brackets with the HTML entity for left angle bracket. That way it wouldn't be executed when we did that document write. Okay. On to the window object. So the window object is like represents your window, more or less. This guy, and you know, if you open a new tab, that tab is a new window object. If you have a window with stuff in it, and then it has an iframe, that iframe would then have a separate window object. And the thing with the window objects is that they have all kinds of properties and methods. So some of the stuff we've already talked about, like setTimeout, they are methods, I believe, of the window object. And so we've already gotten into that. One thing I want to show you is that we can clear both setTimeout and setInterval. So well, that's not going to work, is it? This will work though. So here we have setInterval, and we're stuffing it into my interval variable, and then we're going to clear my interval variable. So this probably won't even run. Go back. Yeah, so that gets cleared before it runs, I believe. But that is very handy. You know, you can run it for a little while and then kill it, anything like that. And you can also do the same thing for setTimeout. It's just clearTimeout is the clear for that. Okay, let's talk about window location. So window location will just show you the URL of the page you're on. So this is the page I'm on. And you can like change the URL of the page by saying like window.location equals, and then you can say like http google.com or something like that, and the page will get redirected to Google. But there are a lot of other properties of the window location. One thing real quick though is that window location is the same as document location. The window object and the document object are not the same, but the window.location and the document.location are the same. Okay, so window location. Also, you don't have to say window dot for all these things because the window is the global scope of whatever we're working in. You don't have to say window. You can just say location. That's the same for all these window properties. You can just call the property directly. So, so I just uploaded this to my server because this doesn't work when I'm working locally. But here we're going to look at all these different properties of the location object. So location is the same as location href. Location href, I believe, makes it a string. So if you're using something like alert that makes something a string anyway, you can just use location. Location protocol is going to be the beginning of your URL, like HTTP or whatever, or HTTPS. Host is similar to host name. It's going to be like pretty much like HTTP XYZ domain.com. I think host would also include the port if you have a port. So it's like HTTP xyz.com colon 8000 if that's your port or whatever. That gets included in host but not in host name. Port would just be that number. It'd be like 8000. Location.path name gives you the whole path and the file name, I believe, but not the host name. So it wouldn't be like xyz.com, but it would be everything after that, you know, slash folder slash file name.html or whatever. Location search gives you anything after a question mark, that part of the URL, and then location hash gives you anything after a number sign. Only that section though. If you have a question mark something and then hash something, location search would only give you the whole part after the question mark before the hash. So I can show you this real quickly. So here we have location, and it's giving the full URL. Location href, also the full URL. Location protocol, http colon. Location host, externalsolutions.com. Location host name, externalsolutions.com. Port, nothing, so there's no port here. Path name slash js20html. And there's no search query, and there's no hash even. So that's that. Okay. There's also a navigator property of the window object. The navigator property tells you stuff about your browser. For some reason, navigator.app name still says Netscape on a lot of stuff, so pretty much don't use that. It's not really accurate. Navigator.app version is more accurate, but it gives you a lot of crazy stuff. So I'm running Chrome here, so this part of it's right, but this is a little confusing. Similarly, user agent is what you usually use to figure out what kind of browser somebody's giving. User agent is what comes in on the header, but know that headers can be faked, I believe. So it's kind of impossible to 100% accurately figure out what somebody's running. And this is Navigator platform. It'll tell you I'm on Windows, and it'll tell you some stuff about the operating system, maybe. Okay, there are some other parts of Navigator. There's Navigator Online. This is saying, yes, I'm connected to the internet, I'm connected to a network. There's Navigator Geolocation, which returns an object, and then we can get into the properties of that object. Geolocation tells you where the user is, or at least where their internet service provider is located. It can get you fairly close. This is Java enabled, and yes, I have Java enabled, and I believe that's Java, not JavaScript. It's saying, hey, you know, can I run a Java app on this person's browser? And then, do I have cookies enabled? And for some reason, that doesn't even run on Chrome. That might be a security thing. Okay, let's talk about dialog pop-ups. These are also properties of the window object. You have alert, which we've used a billion times. Confirm and prompt are similar to alert. So that's alert. prompt, instead of just saying OK, it says OK or cancel, and it returns true if you hit OK, and it returns false if you hit cancel. And then prompt gives you an input, and you have to type stuff, and then you can hit OK. So I shall show you some of those in better form. So here we have a confirm. That'll say, should I say hi? And if you hit OK, it'll return true, and then this would get returned true, and then this will run. It would say hi, and if it gets returned false, if you hit cancel, it'll run bye. It'll say bye. Should I say hi? Yes, hi. If we run that again and we hit cancel, it will say bye. Okay, similarly, you could say prompt, and whatever gets entered in the input in prompt gets returned here. So if we stuff it into a variable called name, then we can output that and use it later. So it's going to say, what's your name? If I say Fluffy, let's say, hi, Fluffy. Okay. So there is also a onError property of window. So I grabbed this from another site, but this is a good example of onError in action. So here, this is saying on click, run this function, but this function is never defined or declared. So that's an error, and it'll do whatever we say on error. So on error, we're going to run this function that will alert an error occurred. We could do anything. We could try to handle our error and fix it and stuff like that also. So if we click this, let's say an error occurred. Okay, so here's that getElementById stuff we were talking about. We'll get more into this later, but I need to show you this real quick. So if you have an ID on something like paragraph, you can grab that using document.getElementById, and then here I'm stuffing it in a variable called paragraph, and then I'm going to alert paragraph inner HTML, which would be whatever's inside. jQuery does this a lot better, but we're getting into old school JavaScript, which is fun and powerful. So this will alert howdy. So I showed you that because actually, if you have an ID anywhere on your page as an attribute of an element, that ID is a property of the window object. So you don't need to do all that stuff. You can just say alert paragraph inner HTML, and it'll know exactly what we mean. So that is kind of cool. Similarly, certain, not all, certain elements, if they have the name attribute, whatever name you give it is also a property of the window object. So here, forms are one example. I think iframes are another. I think links are also one of the ones. So here, we can just grab my form, and then forms. This isn't because this is not a property of the window object, but this is now a property of the form object. It's because it's an input inside a form. So you can say my form, my input value. So we're starting this out with the value of hi, and then with the JavaScript we're changing the value to bye. So that's what that is. And that's everything. So hope you learned about client-side scripting and window object stuff.